Hello, welcome to today's immigration tidbit. We get the working on the bicycle version today. So there's a lot of confusion and questions about marrying somebody for the green card. And I'd like to clear some of that up, and I'd like to explain more what the consequences are and more what immigration looks at in order to make it a bit more clear as to when and how these issues come up. So the first thing you have to realize is you shouldn't get married in order just to get the green card. Okay, you shouldn't try to defraud the government to do that. I mean, that seems like an obvious statement, but there's a lot of people in different countries that believe it's easy, and when you question them before the consequences hit, the answer is always usually the same. Well, I know 6 people that did the same thing and they never got caught, okay, and they're doing just peachy fine, which is normally not the case, and normally the consequences do catch up. There's also, just as an aside, a wide variety of other types of ways of immigrating other than marriage, which people just are unaware of. So a nice consultation with an immigration lawyer would resolve that. So first, let's talk about the typical path that people will take. Somebody somewhere will pay somebody $10,000, give or take. I'm just going from all the cases that I've seen, to get married, and then the moment they get their green card, they say goodbye, and they attempt to make everything look real, okay? They, attempt to show they live in the same place, they attempt to have a joint bank account. The problem here is several-fold. But first, let me explain the consequences of what happens when it's found out. First of all, the foreign national who paid the money to do this, whatever the remuneration was, they are going to be adjudicated most likely to have committed marriage fraud, and because of that, the law says that they're never entitled to immigration benefits again for the rest of their lives. Okay, so I've had a lot of times where people have come in, 20 years after this happened, and now they're totally in love, married, and have 6 kids, absolute complete bona fide marriage, after the first one fell apart. And they say, what can I do? And the only thing that can be done is we have to go back to the original marriage. We have to try to show that, in fact, there wasn't any marriage fraud, or that, the ruling was incorrect. And so that's obviously difficult to do. But as you can see, the consequences for the foreign national are severe. It's not a slap on the wrist. It's not, you committed marriage fraud, so we'll, not let you do anything for a few years and then you can come back and try again. It's not like that, okay? It's for life. So that's for the foreign national. Now, what about the American citizen? What about the person who took the money? Well, that's a crime too. And while they certainly can't be deported and they could care less about, not being able to adjust status and so forth, they can be federally prosecuted for marriage fraud, and they can be put in prison. So there are different consequences for the U.S. citizen who took the money and for the foreign national who gave the money. Okay, different consequences, both of them fairly severe. So, at first blush, you don't want to try to engage in that type of behavior. Now, The fact is that a lot of times the foreign nationals coming from a different country think they know better and how to defraud and trick the U.S. immigration officials more than the U.S. immigration officials here in the U.S., which to me I've never quite understood. You know, I would never think that I know more than some official in a different country about what it is that they're doing. So they see marriage fraud all the time. Okay, it is not difficult to spot. So no matter how smart the person thinks they are, and no matter how well they think they're planning the fraud, it's really quite easy to spot. I mean, all immigration, it's simple. All immigration has to do is get both of you in a different room and ask 10 questions. There is no way that with those questions that you will have sufficiently prepared the lies to meet everything that could possibly have been said. You won't also meet the surprise inspections, okay? A lot of times it's just one little thing that blows it up, okay? Sometimes, they'll make a joint bank account, have everything else in line, but then after a year, the officer will notice that no money has come in and out of the joint bank account. All they did was make a joint bank account. Other than that, they didn't do anything else. So, the work it takes to try to commit marriage fraud is a lot of work in the first place, but you're just not going to get away with it. So you don't want to engage in something where there's very high consequences. So let's say that you do get away with it. I've had a lot of cases where the U.S. citizen, 5-10 years after the person gets their green card, and after they took the money, they call up and they go to the foreign national who paid them. They say, well, I'm a little low on money. So I know you already paid $10,000 10 years ago, and you have your green card now, but I need you to send me another $5,000, or else I'm going to call immigration on you and tell them what happened. And even if they have no real intention of doing that, which, by the way, a lot of them do, even if they have no real intention of doing that, the foreign national will be scared out of their minds that in fact they're going to be caught, that it's going to all come up again. They thought it was done, but it's going to all come up again. They're going to be put in deportation and, removed from the U.S. And so they end up paying more money. So when a foreign national pays money to a U.S. citizen to commit marriage fraud, and then they get their green card and they think they outsmarted the system, what they're not taking into consideration is the person who took the money has them on the hook for the rest of their lives. Whenever that person needs money, whenever that person runs low, whenever that person wants to go on a vacation, they're going to call the foreign national and demand the money, or they're going to call immigration and put them, try to put them in removal proceedings. Now, as I told you earlier, the U.S. citizen has committed a crime, okay? But you have to understand that if a U.S. citizen is willing to take the $10,000 to commit marriage fraud, they're committing a crime right there. They know they're committing a crime. So why would they all of a sudden be so good and honorable years later that they would never touch it again? That doesn't happen, okay? So where you originally think that committing marriage fraud, and when I say you, I'm talking about the foreign national who thinks they're going to outsmart the system and thinks that it's such an easy way to get the green card. The reality is it's the exact opposite, because like I'm telling you, even if they successfully got the green card, they're still on the hook with the U.S. citizen, and that's never going to change. Okay, so that's one thing. So what do they look for? What does immigration look for in a bona fide marriage to make sure it's real? Okay, well, sometimes they do surprise inspections, meaning that they'll just hop over to your door, knock on it, and they'll see who's there. They'll be given permission, most likely, to walk inside, because if you don't give them permission, the first thing they're going to think is, well, you're trying to hide something. So generally people will give them permission. They'll walk inside, they'll look in the bedroom, they'll see only one set of clothes there, they'll see only one dresser with clothes, they won't see two. They will sometimes interview the landlord of the property, who will attest that there's only been one person living there, even though there might be two people that have signed the lease. Okay, so there's the physical way itself of showing that they do or don't live together. And then, of course, you look at the documentary evidence. You look at the joint bank accounts. You see if there's money that has actually gone through it, not just pretend money, not just a little bit here and a little bit there to make it look like it's real. Okay, that's easy enough to see. So that's one of the things. Look at the history of how they met, how long they knew each other, how long they were dating before they got married. Look at their age differences. There's always some flags. Obviously, if there's a 30-year difference, that's an issue. That doesn't mean it can't be done. I've successfully put through marriage petitions where there's a 40-year difference, but it has to be proven, okay? The bona fides need to be shown. So generally, when people engage in this fraudulent activity, they won't have known each other that long, and there won't be a trail of how long they've known each other. And immigration looks at that. They find someone who will agree to commit marriage fraud. They enter into the agreement, they do it, and they don't have a real history together. So immigration can certainly look at that lack of history to further determine that there is no bona fides in the particular marriage itself. Okay? So these are a couple of the ways. Then, as I had stated earlier, in the interview itself, they'll bring both of you in, but at different times. And, everybody thinks, who commits the marriage fraud, thinks they know exactly what they're going to ask. They're going to ask, what color is your toothbrush, when you went on vacation last, all this stuff. But they always find different stuff to ask, because they know that people are trying to anticipate what they're going to ask. So they'll ask different things, and the reality is that all of a sudden the U.S. citizen becomes super nervous because they know what they've done is wrong. And then the foreign national, of course, is terrified because, they're in a different country. They've committed fraud. They have an officer that's grilling them up and down, and their whole plan just goes out the window. So I hope I've illustrated sufficiently that you don't want to commit marriage fraud, and I've explained the consequences and the procedures and what immigration looks at in order to determine that. So even if you're not committing marriage fraud, you still have to prove, obviously, a bona fide marriage, and there's lots of good ways of doing that. Lots of different ways of doing that, which have to be done. So if you are thinking about doing this, of course the answer is don't, but get a consultation. I could literally give a 2-minute consultation to somebody and find a different path that is more realistic, that is more effective, and that won't get them in trouble. And that's the whole bottom line, right? To end up getting here legally without having some string attached the rest of your life that you're going to have to keep going back to. Okay, so be smart, don't do this, and get a consultation on what other options you have. Okay?